So during World War II, Benito Mussolini, dictator of Italy, allied with Adolf Hitler in Germany, right? And then there, some minor countries along with that had also, teamed up with Italy and Germany and of course Japan later. But Mussolini actually coined the term fascism, and where fascism comes from, it's really interesting, but where fascism actually comes from, fasces, it's a bound bundle of wooden rods, often but not always included on an axe, occasionally two axes with its blade emerging. Fasces is an Italian symbol that had its origin in the Etruscan civilization, was passed on to ancient Rome, where it symbolized a Roman king's power to punish his subjects, and later a magistrate's power and jurisdiction. And it's really important in this whole thing. I know that this probably doesn't sound very intriguing right now, but it is really intriguing. So Benito Mussolini created what he called fascism, so the fascist party. And what he said was that fascism is actually kind of probably not the appropriate way to describe what it was that they were doing. He said that the better way to describe it would be corporatism. So that's what Mussolini said, like back in the 40s. He said it would be better described as corporatism. All of the private interests and all of the, larger entities, within a country or organization or whatever that basically steer the government. What's really funny is that if you look at how we're structured today, when you have the things, like happening in the US that they talk about, like Antifa, right? So the anti-fascist. So what's funny about Antifa is that the majority of them are actually funded by non-government organizations that are directly linked to corporations. Even though they say that they are anti-fascist, they are in fact, by their actions and what they're doing, themselves fascist. And then here's something that I'll show you that's really intriguing as well. Look at this. Isn't that interesting? On our dime in the 40s, we had the symbol of fascism. And then check this out. In the 50s, then it turned into the torch. From 1916, so basically the entire time that the fascists were gaining power in Europe, we're putting it on our currency. Very interesting. Almost like maybe there's a connection there. My point with that is, and the reason I went kind of on that little diatribe, is that that is a function of corporatism, what Larissa was describing. Like, we'll just replace you. There is no human value. There is no human value. Can you do the job? You can't do the job. Can we find somebody that can do the job better and cheaper, that is of benefit to the corporation, with no concern to the actual like human resource? Okay, well, we'll just go ahead and do that. Whether we know it or not, like most countries on the face of the planet right now are actually under the spell of corporatism. If you do actually want to see like what's going on, because symbols are important. I mean, they're very important. If you look at like anything going back into like antiquity, if you had like effigies, little statues of like other deities and stuff, why did they even bother doing any of that? If it was just like, oh, well, it's just like a little effigy, it's no big deal. The belief is, with people of a world, well, I wouldn't even say a world. I mean, it's pretty out in the open now, but is that they would actually have the power to summon those types of deities to be, it's basically an encouragement to that particular deity to present themselves. So that's why, like in the 10 Commandments, it says, you shall have no graven images. It was important enough that God, like, burned it into a granite slab or, whatever, a rock slab. So if it's important enough for God to burn that into a rock slab, I would say that's pretty important. Iconography, imagery, symbolism, like all those things. And then, just to kind of cap it off, and then we come back to this. And it's like, oh, okay, so there's the fasces on the dime during the time that we're fighting fascism. Oh, big deal. Who cares? It's like, well, it means something. Most people are under the impression that we entered World War II as the result of getting bombed at Pearl Harbor, but we actually had made the decision to enter into World War II before that. So the decision had already been made, but there was no real way for our government to persuade the population of the US, to be like, we need to go to war. Because we had already done World War I, and we're like, those guys are all the way over there. We're safe and sound in the US. Like, we're not going to get into the war. Whatever's happening is everybody else's business. We weren't isolationists, but we were definitely not, we weren't meddling in anything. And this is how we got into World War II, is that, so Great Britain had begging for the US to come to their aid, and we were not coming to their aid. We were sending them materials and stuff, but we weren't coming to their aid or getting involved with, personnel and that sort of thing. So what happened was, some of the facts I don't remember, we had some parts of our Navy over near Great Britain, and it was essentially just to protect our own interests. So we were like protecting our transport boats and like supply boats and all that other stuff. Something had happened to like one of our warships. Great Britain basically like said, you're either going to join the war or we're going to sink we're actually going to sink all your ships, because if they get captured, then they'll go into the hands of Germany, and we can't have that. That's when America was like, okay, fine, give us a little bit of time, we need to figure out how we're going to get our population on board with that. And so then that's when they learned about Pearl Harbor. So they knew that Pearl Harbor was going to happen, and they let Pearl Harbor happen. So they knew ahead of time that Pearl Harbor was going to happen, and the powers that be in Washington were like, no, just let it happen. Doesn't sound very very Christian to me. Sounds kind of fascist, actually. Let the people, the good of the many outweigh the good of the few. I'm completely 100% against all of that, just naturally.